Tonight's tactical enhancement is a tasting selection of Johnny Walker. Tonight we're playing Warhammer. 3,000 points of Warhammer. Dwarves versus vampire counts. Tonight's game is a conventional battle line, mostly because we forgot to roll for a mission, so it's defaulted to a battle line. Emilio, talk us through what you've got.
Yeah, okay, so I guess I'll start with my general. He's right at the front there. Where is he?
Right, with the, what are they, Crypt Guard?
So he's Manfred von Carstein.
Righto.
Level 4 wizard. And the battle standards in there as well. You've got over to the left-hand side, and a whole unit of Grave Guard. So there's quite a large number of those, 40 of them in there.
40?
Yeah, and then we've got our Crypt Ghouls. There's about 30 of those over on the left flank.
Lovely.
I decided not to field any zombies. I did some reading up and, there's positives and negatives, but no zombies. So went with 2 units of skeleton warriors. So there's 36 in that block, 36 in that block, and one of them is the vampire's actually, he's in with
dude right at the front
there.
Lovely.
Yeah, seen him. And then you've got your dire wolves, which I think we've got 5 of them over here, and another 5 over that side.
Someone doing a flank run over there.
Yeah, and then you've got your bat swarms, and your fell bats, the larger variety of bats over there. There's I don't know if you can see it, there's a corpse cart
there we go.
in the back there.
Lovely.
And you've also got a black coach in there as well. So there's
some cannon magnets.
there's 3,000 points.
And what are these fellas here?
Oh, so they're we've got them here as Vargheists.
Vargheists.
So
Okay,
there's
so
3 and 3.
A couple of quick questions. The war dogs. Look,
Yep.
God, tripod's playing up.
The dire wolves.
Direwolves. How many wounds have they got?
They've got only got 1 wound.
1 wound. All right. That's nice. And the Vargheists, I'm assuming you've got like 3 or something.
Yeah, they've got 3 wounds.
All right. Lovely. Opposing Emilio's vampires, we have dwarfs, 3,000 points of them. That's all of them on the table, apart from the miners. A couple of cannons, some shooters off to the side to protect the flank. Not sure what he's going to throw on the flank. There's a few flank runners there. Then we have a block of 49 warriors with great weapons and shields, which they probably don't need for this battle because there's no shooting, but I always give them shields so they can wade through the crossbow fire to get to the enemy line. Generals in that unit is a souped up 300 point Thane, or Lord I should say. In the middle we've got a block of ordinary warriors who are transporting the standard bearer. Standard bearer is taught up with runes to reduce the effectiveness of shooting and magic missiles and things. I probably would have flagged that we both picked our armies not knowing what the other guy was bringing. So there's a few things on my list that I wouldn't bother with if I knew I was fighting the vampire counts, and I'm sure the same's true for Emilio's list if he knew he was going up against dwarves and not to say wood elves, for example. And then stacked a little bit far on the flank because there's a hill in the way is a block of 24 long beards with great weapons, also shields to wade through the non-existent crossbow shooting and so forth. And they're carrying about a Thane who's taught up with a few goodies. Might talk through those items in the list at some point. And off the side of the table, waiting to come on at a strategic moment, 2 blocks of 25 miners, and we have old school metal miners, and we have 6th edition plastics, and a few 6th edition monopose ones that came in the starter box set, but mostly they're from the multi-part box. And that's it. There's the battlefield, a few buildings, some hills on the other side. I like to do themed terrain, so it looks a bit like a valley, and a couple of years of trees. Emilio was sick of trees, he told me, so I cut it down to just a couple. Though it's worth noting I'm working on another 6 tree area terrain sections, so that'll more than double my current stash. Might think long and hard about whether to inflict that on Emilio at a later date. Anyway, we will now roll for first turn. Let's see if we can get this dice roll on camera. Well, I got a 1, Emilio got a 5. I guess that means he gets to choose to go first if he is so inclined. Taking the first turn?
Yeah, I will.
Right, no worries. Well, we'll check in pretty much at the end of that turn, I think. The end of turn 1 with the Undead, and mine wasn't that eventful. They've advanced. Emilio is going to great lengths to see if he can hide the corpse cart behind something, but that's not possible, unfortunately. And if there was something to hide behind, there'd probably be woods, and chariots and woods don't like each other. He has moved his Vargeist around over here, so there's a bit of a flank run happening, and the what are those guys called? Ghouls. They're moving at more conventional speed, so they might hit the flank as well. And there's some direwolves over here. The other direwolves are hiding from the handgunners over there behind that building. Now, there's no shooting, but the magic was eventful. Emilio rolled 6 dice for, what's that thing called?
It's called the Wind of Death, and I went for the most powerful, which is 25 plus from the magic pool.
It was risky, but the thing just made it.
But I rolled a double 6, and...
yeah, well, that's right. The spell went off with maximum power, so I couldn't dispel it. It collected my small unit of warriors and bumped off about half of them, actually. That was a bit rough. More than half, in fact.
And the spell's still there at this stage.
In fact, I'm pretty sure I'll go to a panic test in a moment. But in the process, he rolled boxcars, and a template was placed over his wizard, inflicted a wound on the wizard, drained all the remaining power dice from the turn, and blew away 10 skeletons. So I think in terms of damage, it was worse for the dwarfs than it was for the skeletons, but Jesus Christ, they paid for it. So that was entertaining. And I'll roll a couple of dice now, and hopefully those dwarfs don't panic. And they're okay, because they're dwarfs, and it would suck if they were running away on turn 1 before I'd even moved. Alright, so it's now over to the dwarf turn 1. We'll check in at the end of that. Right, in the dwarf turn, the miners can't arrive this turn, so we've rearranged our lines. I backed up the infantry slightly to avoid that template that's centered on that artillery dice. I shuffled in these troopers to try and bring my line together, and I wheeled around the horde. The only thing stopping the line coming together at the moment really is that Winds of Death template, and I rolled
21.
a whole lot of power dice to dispel it, and I got 21 plus 2 for the dwarf's natural resistance. Can't cast any spells in their own turn, but they can still use power dice to dispel, and we completely fucking failed to dispel it. That was very annoying. The cannonball had to go at the black coach. Both cannonball hit it. First one did 1 dice, second dice actually did 5 points of damage, but Emilio passed his ward save, so that damn thing is still in operation. Fortunately, I've got plenty more turns to try and kill it. And that's it for Dwarf turn 1. Now to Dwarf turn 2. And for the record, we're now into the Johnny Walker double black. It's not even turn 2, we started on the double black. We'll check in after the vampire counts. Turn 2. Undead turn 2. They're closing in on the flanks. They're stacking up to, well, presumably go for a cannon, I would think. And that line is moving faster than I thought it did. I did not realise that undead units within 12 inches of the general can still march. I still had my head back in 5th edition or something when the rules were different. So that line's coming in hard. Now, magic phase was fun. One spell got all very confused and we ended up just calling time on that spell. It seemed like the fairest result. Then Emilio cast, what's that?
It was the Curse of Years.
Curse of Years on the Longbeards. Like they're not old enough already, frankly. Full power, he rolled these boxcars, bumped off 5 of the buggers, but Emilio is rolling a shitload of 6s today. And he's the Yahtzee king normally, but he keeps rolling up double 6s to cast, and then he keeps rolling a 6 on the miscast table.
Which is devastating.
And he blew away 12 of his, what are they? Graveguard.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think 10 of them cucked it. Whatever it was, he blew away a whole bunch of his own guys. He actually killed more of his own guys than he killed of mine again. And that spell remains in effect, so I've got to try and dispel it quickly before it wipes out that unit. The good news is I used the remaining dispel dice to bump off the remains in place spell, the Winds of Death. So thank fuck that's gone. We'll now try and tighten up the dwarf lines in dwarf turn 2. And the first most important thing is, do the miners arrive? And they do. Lovely. We're in business. Check in at the end of the dwarf turn. During the dwarf turn, the miners turned up just behind Emilio's flank attack. It's a little bit constrained. Some of these miners may have to march to the forest, which is really not optimal, but this will help us address problems developing on the flank, and these dwarves will be able to get through to that line if they keep wheeling around to attack. We brought the dwarf line together. So that's, well, it would have been 100 dwarf if Emilio hadn't magicked a bunch of them off the table, but that's okay. That's he's not shooting me, but he's magicking me good and proper. The handgunners were just out of range, so I shuffled them around to a better angle. Now the cannon decided to pick on the corpse cart because the corpse cart has regen instead of a ward, and one of my cannon has flaming attacks, which buggers up regen. So I figured that was a better target. The flaming attacks did 1 wound out of the D6, and the other cannonball, which is not flaming attacks, did only 1 wound, and Emilio passed his regen for that cannon. So I'm not doing a lot with the cannon. The good news is the cannon are not exploding, which is more than can be said for Emilio's magic users. Emilio's actually done more damage to himself than I've done to him this game. And in fact, he's done more damage to himself than he's done to me so far. We did use some power dice to roll a dispel, and we got rid of one of the last remains in play spell, which is good because that would have bumped off a third of the Longbeards otherwise. And on that note, what's the next whiskey that we're going to get to in the collection there?
We'll go up the line.
Yeah, what have we got there?
So this one's going to be Gold Label.
Gold Label. We're moving on to the Gold Label. All right. Well, that was short and sweet. It's now to turn 3 for the Undead, and we'll see what carnage ensues. It's the end of turn 3 for the Vampire Counts, and Vampire Counts are going first, so Dwarf turn 3 is yet to happen. And you can see the lines firming up. Emilio's decided to get his lines in order before advancing the last stretch. He's have some Vargeists here on the other side of the forest to presumably counter those miners. Not quite sure what to do with them just yet. Now over here, his flank run got through and he smashed a cannon on the charge of the Vargeist. They basically did what they're designed to do.
And they followed through.
Oh, and they very narrowly avoided overrunning into the next cannon, so they've got one last hurrah before they're basically buggered. As for magic, he got back a unit, or created a unit of 15 skeletons. There's only a roll of 5 on the power dice and no channeling, so I was given a bit of a reprieve this turn. and he had a go at trying to resurrect some troopers, but I dispelled that. This is the first turn in which Emilio has done no damage to his own army, as well as no damage to mine in the magic phase. So at this point, I think I will just pause, do Dwarf turn 3 and check in after that. Right, well, a very fast Dwarf turn. We moved up the miners as fast as we could. I've held my line back to try and coordinate their fight with the engagement of the miners. I'm not worried about those little beasties there hitting the longbeards in the flank. They can handle that. I redeployed my handgun, as you can see in the background there, to shoot at the Vargeist, because he won't be able to completely hit anything basically after he's killed the cannon. Cannon dumped grape shot and knocked 2 wounds off the Vargeist, which is bang on the odds. And that's about it. Very fast Dwarf turn. So we're back to the vampire counts. Moving into turn 4. We've just polished off the gold label Johnny Walker. We'll check in at the end of vampire counts turn 4. Alright, so end of vampire counts turn 4. Now, Dwarves have not had their turn 4 yet, but just a quick update on what happened. The main line shuffled forward, and Emilio put a disruptor there into the ranks. Slightly annoying. I'm going to have to think about what to do about those fellas. The Crypt Ghouls charged the miners, killed 3, mostly due to the poison attacks. And we killed 5 of them in return, which would be okay. I won the combat by 3, thereabouts. But the general was just within 12, so they didn't actually lose any rolled, really low for his leadership, which is great. So he didn't actually lose anything else. Now that wouldn't matter, except that we're really not very well positioned to be in a meat grinder with our flanking units here. So we have to think about what to do about that. Over here, unsurprisingly, the Vargeists destroyed another cannon. There's no one running away for them to pursue, so they're just been formed on the spot. And we'll have to think about what to do about these little chappies. And that is it. In the magic phase, Emilio rolled up a storm for the winds of magic, but then rolled rather shithouse, I have to say.
I didn't use enough dice from the power pool, and I failed the spell.
Yeah, I mean, it was enough dice under normal circumstances. Your odds of getting it were like 90%, but you just
rolled 2 ones.
Yeah. So Emilio's Yahtzee left him for this turn, which is nice, and we'll now do the Dwarf turn and see how that pans out. So we're halfway through turn 4 at the moment, and we're about to get into the 18-year-old Johnny Walker. That's the last of the 4 bottles. We're going through about a bottle a turn at the moment. We'll see how badly it's affecting my speech when I go back and edit this video. End of turn 4, and what I did was I declared 3 charges. These chaps did not make it, so their efforts to get into these chaps failed, which means that I was going to try and hold up both units with the longbeards for a couple of turns while I did other things. Hasn't worked out. The more I look at it, the more I think that may have been a slightly dicey proposition anyway. This unit of this very depleted unit took a whole bunch of wounds off the Skeleton Warriors, which is fine, but they may get flank charged next turn by these Skeleton Warriors. We'll see what happens. Now, the Horde, I crashed into the unit of, what, 6 or so?
5.
5 War Dogs, whatever they are, on the basis that if I wipe them all out, then I can reform on the spot. Which I did, which puts me in a good flanking position to hit the line at the side, which may prove very useful in subsequent turns. So as a spoiler, it was very annoying. It stopped me doing what I wanted, but I crashed through and got an alternative that isn't bad. Now that's all fine. These shooters bumped off one of the Vargeist, killed, just took 3 wounds off. So that whole unit's only got 4 wounds left on it. I might be able to bump them off soon. Over here, I decided that I had nothing but bad choices for the second minor unit, so I charged into the Crypt Ghouls. It did help in killing more of the bastards. In fact, it actually doubled my number of kills. Now the Crypt Ghouls did bump off 4 miners. I bumped off 8 Crypt Ghouls, but between the charge, the extra ranks, the banners, etc., and some unfortunate dice rolls, we killed a lot more of them in the due to the instability. So that's all well and good. The problem is I'm going to get charged in 2 directions by heavy hitters. Now, one of these dwarf units will be steadfast. That's fine. They'll, hopefully stick around. The other unit is looking like it's going to get destroyed next turn, just from failing its morale after getting smashed in 2 flanks. Not a good combo, but the best I could do. On the flip side, it's tying up 3 or 4 units that would otherwise be sorting out the main dwarf line. I won't hazard any guesses as to how this flank is going to work out in the end, but it's going to be messy either way. Anyway, over to turn 5 of the Vampire Counts. And Emilio is doing my tactics back to me at the moment. Actually, he's got me good and surrounded. But that's right, I've given all the main dwarf lines Oathstone, so they're quite happy to be surrounded. And we'll check in at the end of Vampire Counts, turn 5. Okay, the end of, God, I think it's turn 4 for the Undead. Well, my flank attack had a bit of a bad day. They got sandwiched, which I expected, and I kind of figured they weren't likely to stick around. But before they had a chance to do any damage, we discovered that the Black Coach causes terror. I then rolled 11 for my miners, and they ran away. That was very annoying. But in the ensuing melee, the other minor unit finished off what was left of the ghouls and is redeployed to be able to deal with the Vargeist if they decide to play. Otherwise, we're in position to do what we need to do. In the centre, the handgunners had a bad time of it in melee. They didn't kill very much. And they lost 5 of their number. Lots of shit dice rolls. The Dwarfs continue to do okay in that little unit there. Now, as for the Longbeards, well, Emilio managed to get some good dice out in his magic phase. He's basically Yahtzee King today, which is normal for Emilio. You kind of got to factor that into your strategy. And look, these Longbeards got thoroughly ganged up on, and the vampire there just went and hacked and slashed his way through.
2 vampires, was there a friend?
2 vampires, a lord and a hero. And on top of that, Emilio got some buff spells out that increased the amount of wounds that they dish out. I'm actually kind of surprised that the Longbeards are still there. They certainly won't be next turn, and the only reason they're still there is because they have a rune on their banner that makes them stubborn. So that's looking a bit shit. On the flip side, it's a dwarf turn next, so they'll sandwich the last of their skeletons and kill them off. Then we can work out what to do from there. Yes, it's still anyone's game. We wanted a meat grinder, we wanted lots of casualties. It's worth noting Emilio and I, after the last Wood Elf game, had decided that we'll take some armies that are guaranteed to crash into each other this time, yeah. And they have. So another drink for me, I think, and then we'll get on with Dwarf turn 4.
That's it.
Right, the end of Dwarf turn 4, and we are calling it for tonight. These miners here got a bit of revenge for their fallen brethren and smashed that remaining unit of Vargeist. Chased them off the table, actually, leaving them unable to be charged in the date by these Black Coach. The warriors did alright, handgunners did alright. They wounded a few bats, but they're unbreakable, so they stick around, and they chased off the last of those dogs who fled off the table. Over here we smashed the remainder of that unit's skeletons. Unfortunately, unsurprisingly, the remainder of the Longbeards were just killed outright. The Thane then rolled 11 for his leadership, but frankly he needed boxcars anyway. Snake eyes anyway. So that was a bit unfortunate, but then again, Emilio did hit it with 3 units, including his Death Star with the General and a Hero, and a lot of buffs, so that was perhaps to be expected. So we're now left with a situation where the flank is fully accounted for. These miners would come back and then be charged presumably by the coach. They take that in the face, and as long as they don't run away, they can then engage in a fight. Not sure how that would pan out, probably a meat grinder. And then we would see, unless Emilio started running away, we would see the Lions form up here for a turn 6 smash off.
I also have
versus Death Star.
A level 4 wizard alive, a level 2 wizard alive, and magic was definitely going to be to my advantage because I could concentrate my magic on the Death Star. And I had some spells that, if they got through, could run havoc on that bigger unit.
Well, yes, if they get through and if you don't blow up in the process, you'd certainly do some damage, but I guess at the end of the day, I've got 2 units versus 2 units. My army standard bearer and my 300-point general versus your army standard bearer and your probably 300-point general.
Always higher than that.
Yeah.
I've got 2 hero vampires and I've got a general vampire who's buffed.
Yeah. So I've got you've got slightly more hero hitting power in there.
Correct.
But then I do have a 500-point Death Star that'll make mincemeat of anything in front of it. Yeah. So look, it would have been a meat grinder. I think at this point it's still anyone's game, but we've had to call it because it's well past pumpkin o'clock. We did the points total. Emilio's ahead by a couple hundred, but in the grand scheme of things, we are well within draw territory. And I think that was a rather satisfying game.
Yeah, hope you enjoyed it.
Well, we certainly enjoyed it, and we enjoyed the tasting selection that went down all right.
Just a finishing note. Could I have done anything differently? I think I stuck to my game. I didn't spread my units out thinly. I definitely did counter the reserve dwarf units that came on, being mindful. It's 1/3 of his army came on wherever he wanted it to come on. I countered it. So they didn't end up being a problem for me. And I'm quite satisfied. I haven't played the Undead Army 3,000 points for at least 4 or 5 years. And so it's good to come back and have a game with them. And geez, they are competitive.
Yeah, Undead, they certainly are. It was interesting. We both stuck to our game plan. Emilio's worked rather well. I think mine didn't quite have the impact I wanted it to. Although, I mean, there's always going to be shit dice in the mix. I think there was for both of us. Emilio's early forays into magic was certainly spectacular. My flank attack, instead of being the crushing flank attack, it turned out more to be diversionary and pulled a bunch of units away from the main battle line. It's not a bad thing. They did manage to kill some stuff. Probably went point for point there. My Death Star didn't make it in. I thought that it would. Well, actually it did make it in, but the thing it killed wasn't really particularly special.
A couple of my wild dogs changed your plans for your Death Star. And, you know, we're talking about 80 points worth of dogs affected your game plan.
Well, you know, it's interesting. They wiped out the 80 points worth of dogs, and then by doing the flank hit, they went and destroyed another unit. So it wasn't all bad, and then they positioned well for the remaining game. So, yeah, I don't know. It was alright. Normally at this point I'd ask, what have we learned? But I think we've just covered off on that already.
I think we have.
Yeah, these
Oh, your cannons versus my chariots. You were really unlucky because 3 turns of firing, and you did one wound, not enough to shut down my buff chariots.
Yes.
And the chariots did the job that they needed to do. So your cannons were reliable, but not effective.
My nearly 300 points worth of cannon got upgraded so that they would be reliable. Consistently rolled a fuckload of 1s.
Yeah.
That was disappointing. Look, it's not a game changer, but...
Well, if you took out my chariots in the first 2 turns, it could have been a game changer because the buffs they
Well, yeah,
helped
and
my
it certainly
troops.
would have changed out this flank here if I managed to kill the black coach.
Yeah.
But, if buts, maybes, there's stuff that could have worked differently on both sides. I think your game plan probably panned out better than mine. That may have something to do with me being sloppy and not protecting the flank of my cannon properly.
But also, I've got a lot more faster moving troops in the mix, and they did the job they needed to, which was to hunt war machines, and they did that job really well.
Yeah, they're certainly going to outmaneuver. My shooters actually didn't. No, actually, they finished off. They polished off a unit of Vargeist, so they did all right in the shooting. That's the only shots that one round of shooting they got, and then they polished off another unit of things in melee. So, very peculiar game in that regard. I always tore up handgunners with shields because I figure they're going to spend more time in melee than shooting. But so some interesting experiences all through, and I have to say I did not know exactly what I was dealing with, and I paid for that a couple of times in this game. But all the same, that was good. Well, feel free to hit like, subscribe, comment, and hopefully we'll do some more of these.
Thanks for watching.
Cheers, folks. See you next time.